There's a slab of limestone in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It's small, barely 2 feet tall. It sits behind glass with a catalog number, Journal d'Entrée 2091, and a faded label that almost nobody reads. Most people walk right past it. They're looking for gold, for Tutankhamun's mask, for the great painted coffins. This thing is just gray stone cut with rows of worn hieroglyphs, easy to mistake for a temple inventory or a tax record. But hidden inside it is something that shouldn't exist. Carved into that stone is a sentence that quietly breaks the official timeline of human history. According to the text on this tablet, the most famous monuments on the planet, the Great Sphinx and the temple standing beside it, were not built by the pharaoh we always credit. They were already there. He found them. He repaired them. He inherited them from someone who came before. Not a myth, not a metaphor. A claim pressed into stone by the very people who lived in the shadow of the pyramids. That the pyramids were raised on top of something older, something they did not build, something that may still be down there, sealed beneath the sand and the bedrock, waiting. This is the story of that something, and it starts with the tablet almost everyone ignores. The artifact has a name. Egyptologists call it the Inventory Stela. It was pulled out of the ground at Giza in 1858 by the French archaeologist Auguste Mariette, near the ruins of a small temple of the goddess Isis, just east of the Great Pyramid. It's limestone, roughly 70 centimeters tall, 42 wide. The surface is divided into neat registers, and most of it is exactly what the nickname suggests: an inventory. A list of 22 divine statues that once stood inside that temple, each one described by material and size, like a curator's ledger of sacred objects. That part is boring. That part is why people walk past it. It's the heading that's the problem. Because before the list begins, the text makes a statement about who built what at Giza, and when. It says the temple of Isis was already standing when Khufu came to the plateau. Khufu, the pharaoh history tells us, raised the Great Pyramid around 2580 BC. The largest stone monument ever built by human hands. On this tablet, he isn't the founder. He's described as the man who discovered an existing temple beside the body of the Sphinx and rebuilt it. He restored the gods he found inside. Then he put his pyramid next to it. Read that again. The text doesn't credit Khufu with creating Giza. It credits him with renovating a place that was already sacred, already old, already there. If you only take one thing from this video, take it now, and if a 4,000-year-old riddle carved under the pyramids is the kind of thing you want more of, this is the moment to subscribe. Because the deeper we go, the stranger the trail gets, and I don't want you to lose it. Now let's keep moving. So how do mainstream scholars handle a tablet that says the Sphinx predates the man who supposedly commissioned everything around it? They date it late. And honestly, they have good reasons. The style of the carving, the spelling, the grammar, all of it points to the 26th dynasty, the Sate period, around 670 BC. That's roughly 1900 years after Khufu, almost 2000 years. The gap between us and the Roman Empire. Certain titles on the stone, like calling Isis Mistress of the Pyramid, and certain names used for the Sphinx simply don't appear in the written record until more than 1,000 years after the pyramids were built. So the verdict was reached a long time ago. The Inventory Stela is a pious forgery. A late temple, wanting prestige, invented a flattering backstory and projected it deep into the past, claiming their little shrine was older than the Great Pyramid itself to make it seem holier. For decades, scholars dismissed it as symbolic, a bit of priestly marketing, nothing more. But that explanation has a problem. Even the experts who debunked it conceded one uncomfortable possibility. Gaston Maspero, one of the giants of early Egyptology, the man who helped show the stela couldn't have been physically carved in Khufu's lifetime. Even he allowed that the late tablet might be a copy of a much older document. That the words could be ancient even if the stone was young. In Egypt, recopying old sacred texts onto new monuments was completely normal. The carving is Sete. The claim inside it might be far, far older. And there's one phrase on that stone the skeptics never fully explained away. A phrase that isn't about prestige at all. It reads like an address, like coordinates. The stela locates the Sphinx and the temple by reference to another structure entirely. It calls that structure the House of Osiris, Lord of Rostau. The House of Osiris, Lord of Rostau. Hold on to that word, Rostau. Because Rostau is where this stops being about one tablet and starts being about what's under the entire plateau. Here's where it gets strange. In the standard reading, Rostau is mythology, a poetic name for the kingdom of the dead, the shadowy realm Osiris rules in the afterlife, the necropolis as a spiritual idea. Generations of translators rendered it that way. The gate of the dead, the other world, the sacred ground of burial. Safe, symbolic, abstract. But that's not what the word literally means. Strip away the religion and look at the hieroglyphs as a description, and Rostau means something brutally physical. It means, roughly, the mouth of the passages, the opening of the corridors, the entrance to a system of tunnels. And the full title, The House of Osiris, Lord of Rostau, the word for house, is the everyday Egyptian word for a building, a physical structure, a dwelling you can walk into. So read it cold, not as poetry, as a record. The House of Osiris, Lord of the Passages, a building beneath which lies a network of corridors, located at Giza. The Egyptians weren't describing heaven, they were describing geography. They were giving you the layout of a place. They weren't guessing. They were recording. Not a metaphor for the passages, not a poem about the passages themselves. And if there really are passages, a house of Osiris with a mouth of tunnels underneath it, then the obvious question is the one nobody official wants to answer out loud. Has anyone ever found it? The answer is yes. 3 clues. And the first one is already open to the public, if you know where to look. Clue 1. Under the long stone causeway that runs toward the second Great Pyramid, the pyramid attributed to Khafre, there is a vertical shaft cut straight down into the bedrock of the plateau. It was noted on a survey map as far back as the 1830s, marked simply as Shaft Number 1. In the 1930s, the Egyptian archaeologist Salim Hassan partly explored it, but he couldn't reach the bottom. The lowest level was flooded. He tried to pump it out for 4 straight years and failed. The water kept rising, fed by something underground he couldn't stop. It took until 1999 for the water table to drop enough that a full excavation became possible. The dig was led by Zahi Hawass, who would later call it one of the most exciting things he had ever done. What his team found, going down, was a structure on 3 descending levels. An upper chamber, then a deeper chamber lined with niches and holding stone sarcophagi. And then, at the very bottom, nearly 30 meters below the surface, a chamber filled with clear groundwater and a massive granite coffin set into the floor. Hawass named it the Osiris Shaft because it matched, almost exactly, the ancient idea of a symbolic tomb for Osiris, the god of the dead, set deep beneath the earth. And here's the detail that should make the hair on your arms stand up. Cut into the floor of one of the lower levels, his team found a single hieroglyph deliberately carved into the rock, the sign Per, the sign for house. The mainstream interpretation is that the Osiris Shaft is a cenotaph, a purely symbolic tomb, an empty monument to a god, mirroring a similar structure at Abydos. A religious gesture, beautiful, but not literal. But that interpretation may be incomplete, because the plateau's own ancient name is the House of Osiris, Lord of the Passages. And here, in the bedrock, at the bottom of a flooded shaft no one could drain for decades, is a chamber the ancients literally labeled house. Not a symbol of the afterlife floating in the abstract, a house, carved, located, sealed underwater. The geology backs the physical reading too. The Giza Plateau is limestone, and limestone over millions of years dissolves. It forms cavities, fissures, natural voids and water channels running through the rock. The bedrock under those pyramids is not solid. It never was. Which brings us to clue 2. If Rostau is the mouth of the passages, where are the passages? For most of modern history, that question was unanswerable. You can't dig randomly through the most protected archaeological site on Earth. You can't tunnel into the Great Pyramid looking for hidden rooms. So the interior of these monuments stayed a black box, 3 known chambers in the Great Pyramid, and nothing else confirmed for over 100 years. Then, modern science found something that changed everything. Starting in 2015, an international team of physicists and engineers launched a project called Scan Pyramids. Their tool was almost science fiction. Muons, subatomic particles that rain down constantly from cosmic rays hitting the upper atmosphere. Muons pass through solid stone, but they're absorbed at different rates depending on how much rock is in the way. Put sensitive detectors inside and around a pyramid, count the muons coming through from every direction, and you can map density. You can effectively X-ray a mountain of stone without touching a single block. In November 2017, in the journal Nature, the Scan Pyramids team announced the result. Above the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid, hidden inside solid masonry, was a previously unknown void, big, at least 30 meters long, with a cross-section comparable to the Grand Gallery itself. The first major internal structure discovered inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. They called it the Big Void, and it was confirmed 3 separate times by 3 different detector technologies, run by 3 independent teams in Japan, France, and Egypt. Not a glitch, not a smudge in the data, a real empty space sealed inside the pyramid that no one knew was there. Then they found another one, a corridor behind the chevron stones on the north face, roughly 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, 2 meters tall. In 2023, they pushed a tiny endoscope camera through a joint in the masonry and looked inside an empty passage that had been sealed in darkness for 45 centuries. The footage exists. You can watch it. Stop and absorb what that means. We were told for over a century that the Great Pyramid was essentially understood. 3 chambers, some corridors, solid rock, and in less than a decade, non-invasive physics found void after void that the textbooks never mentioned. Hidden space, sealed corridors, cavities in the bedrock. The monuments are far more hollow, far more honeycombed than anyone admitted. The ancients told us the place was full of passages, and the passages keep turning up. Clue 3. The stela said Khufu found the Sphinx already standing. It said he repaired it, and the body of the Sphinx may be the loudest evidence of all that something at Giza is older than the official date. Look at the great trench that surrounds the Sphinx, the enclosure carved out of the bedrock when the statue was shaped. The walls of that trench are weathered in a strange way, deep vertical fissures, rolling, undulating profiles. To several geologists, that pattern looks like erosion caused by water, specifically by long exposure to heavy rainfall running down the rock over very long periods of time. The geologist Robert Schoch and, independently, others like Colin Reeder argued that this kind of rainfall erosion points to a date earlier than the textbook one. Reeder's careful version is conservative. He doesn't claim a lost supercivilization, just that parts of the Sphinx enclosure may predate Khufu, because Giza was getting significant rainfall runoff into the early dynastic period and before. The mainstream answer is that the weathering comes from other causes: wind, salt, the natural decay of soft limestone layers, groundwater wicking up through the stone. And those are real processes. The debate is genuinely unsettled. But notice what the geologists and the tablet are independently saying. The geology hints the Sphinx might be older than Khufu. The Inventory Stela flatly states Khufu found it already there. Two completely different lines of evidence. One cut in stone in antiquity, one read out of the rock with modern science, pointing at the same uncomfortable idea, that the foundations of Giza were laid before the people we credit with building them. And if that's true, it means our history is missing a chapter, which is exactly where the most explosive modern claim enters the story. In March 2025, a team of researchers held a press conference. Filippo Biondi, associated with the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. Corrado Malanga, formerly of the University of Pisa in Italy. The explorer Armando May. They presented their work to an audience of around 1,000 people live-streamed to the world. And what they claimed went far beyond a hidden corridor or a flooded shaft, using a technique they call synthetic aperture radar tomography. Satellite radar combined with software that reads tiny vibrations in the ground, almost like turning the planet's natural microtremors into sonar. They said they had imaged the rock beneath the second pyramid, the Khafre Pyramid. And beneath it, they claimed, was not bedrock, it was architecture. The numbers they gave were specific. 8 enormous vertical wells or cylindrical shafts wrapped in spiral structures, descending, they said, some 648 meters straight down into the earth. 5 identical multi-level chamber structures clustered near the base of the pyramid, linked by geometric pathways, and a system of tunnels stretching roughly 2 kilometers, possibly connecting the chambers beneath all 3 of the main Giza pyramids into one vast subterranean complex, a buried world, larger than the monuments on the surface, older, they implied, than the dynasty that built above it. The mouth of the passages, the Lord of Rostau, 8 shafts and a network of tunnels under Khafre's pyramid. If you only knew the ancient name of the plateau, and then someone read you those numbers, you would swear the modern scan was just confirming the 4,000-year-old address. It was scanned, it was mapped, it was announced to 1,000 people on a live stream. And then it ran straight into a wall. Because here is the institutional resistance, and it was immediate and absolute. Zahi Hawass, the very man who excavated the Osiris shaft, the most powerful voice in Egyptian archaeology, rejected the Khafre claim completely. He stated flatly that no radar equipment had ever been used inside or under the Khafre pyramid, that the researchers had never even come to Egypt to do the work on site, and that their methods were neither approved nor validated by the archaeological community. He called the findings, in plain words, fake news. He pointed out the work had not been peer-reviewed, and the underlying data had not been openly published. And in Egypt, that matters enormously, because every excavation on the plateau must be approved by the Supreme Council of Antiquities. And approval to drill 648 meters down under one of the pyramids of Giza to test a contested radar claim is not coming. Not now, maybe not ever. So, the deepest, strangest claim about what lies under the pyramids sits exactly where so many Giza claims end up. Announced, disputed, unexcavated, sealed. Now slow down, because this is the part the breathless videos skip. And you deserve the honest version. Does any of this prove there's a 648-meter deep machine or a lost pre-Egyptian super civilization with forgotten technology humming under Khafre's pyramid? No, it doesn't. And we should be clear-eyed about why. The Khafre radar claims have real problems. They haven't passed peer review. The team's earlier published work from 2022 was about small features inside the Great Pyramid, not a buried city. Independent experts in ground-penetrating radar have pushed back hard, pointing out that no known radar method, satellite-based or otherwise, can resolve detailed architecture hundreds of meters underground. The signal just doesn't reach that deep with that clarity. The specific renderings of neat cylindrical wells and stacked chambers look more like an interpretation laid over noisy data than a photograph of something real. The skeptics aren't being closed-minded. On this specific extraordinary claim, the evidence genuinely isn't there yet. And the Inventory Stela really is a late carving. The house hieroglyph in the Osiris shaft has a perfectly ordinary religious reading. Rostau really was used as a name for the realm of the dead. The Sphinx erosion debate has serious geologists on the conventional side too. Every single thread in this story has a grounded, sober explanation. But here's the thing. Even after you strip out every wild claim, even when you keep only what is solid, published, and confirmed, the picture that remains is not ordinary at all. It is a fact that the Giza Plateau's ancient sacred name literally references passages. It is a fact that under Khafre's causeway, there is a real 3-level shaft descending 30 meters into a flooded chamber that no one could drain for years, with the word house carved into the rock at the bottom. It is a fact that physics found genuine, previously unknown voids and sealed corridors inside the Great Pyramid in the last decade. It is a fact that the bedrock itself is limestone riddled with natural cavities. And it is a fact that a tablet carved by the Egyptians says, in their own words, that their greatest pharaoh found the Sphinx already standing and merely restored it. You don't need a lost civilization to be unsettled. The grounded version is enough. Giza is far more hollow, far older in its foundations, and far less explored beneath the surface than the tidy story admits. We have barely been under it. And that's what makes the missing chapter so hard to close. Because think about what the modest version actually implies. Even if there is no buried machine, the people of the Old Kingdom looked at the Sphinx, at the bedrock, at the passages, and they wrote that these things came before them. They treated Giza as inheritance, not invention. They built a tomb for the Lord of the Passages and labeled a chamber 30 meters down as a house. They named the whole place after a network of corridors. Either they were describing a real underground complex we have never fully mapped, or they believed, for reasons we no longer understand, that one was down there. And we still cannot get to the bottom of it. Literally, the lowest chamber of the Osiris shaft floods. The water that beat Salim Hassan for 4 years has never been permanently pumped out. The granite coffin at the bottom sits in groundwater, in the dark, and no one has ever cleared and excavated everything beneath that waterline. We don't actually know what's under it. There could be nothing. There could be the mouth of a passage. We don't know, because the water won't let us look. So here is the final question, and it has no answer yet. If the Egyptians named the entire plateau after passages we have only just begun to detect with cosmic particles and radar, if their own monuments are turning out to be full of sealed corridors no one knew existed, then how much of Giza have we actually seen? And how much is still down there in the dark, exactly where they told us it would be? Underwater, no one has drained. Under bedrock, no one is allowed to drill. The tablet is still in Cairo, JE 2091, behind glass, under a label nobody reads, with its quiet, impossible sentence still legible after 26 centuries. The Osiris shaft is still flooding. The plateau under Khafre is still sealed to the drills. The big void is still empty and dark above the Grand Gallery, exactly where the muons found it. And the mouth of the passages, if it's down there at all, is still closed. They told us the name, they told us where to look, and then they let 2,000 years of sand bury the question. If you want to follow that question further down, the next piece of this story is the one about the void above the Grand Gallery, and what the muons may have actually been detecting inside it. Watch that one next, because the deeper we go under these monuments, the more it looks like the people who walked here first weren't building from scratch. They were writing down what they found.